to the Hoopettes podcast. It's Mike Lensing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, and we are jumping on to do our NBA Finals preview along with a little news of the New York Knicks firing Tom Thibodeau today. But we're going to start in the Eastern Conference. Jason, you kind of take me in whatever direction you want to go here.
I mean, we kind of figured. I think when we recorded last week, we thought it was going to be, um, we thought that it was going to be over. Now the Knicks won a game and extended it a little bit more. So kudos to the Knicks. You got the two dubs, not enough. Okay, much to the chagrin of Spike Lee and Timothy Chalamet and all them people, all those stars.
What movie is that guy in? What movies is
Timothy
he in?
Chalamet, the Dune
Yeah.
movies, the
Who?
the Willy Wonka movie, the
Is
Wonka
that about
Wonka.
sand? Is Dune? Is that about sand?
It's, you saw the original Dune, I bet, right?
I don't
In
think
the
so.
'80s.
I don't think so. If I did,
Oh,
I don't remember it.
it's a post-apocalyptic kind of situation.
Okay,
I'll be
there you
honest with
go.
you, my dad. I watched the first one with my dad, and I was like, okay, that was all right. It was interesting. And the second one, I fell asleep during. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyways,
Does
um,
Does John McEnroe not go to Knicks games anymore?
he probably got banned like Tyrese Halliburton's dad because he probably got
Woody
emotional or
Allen?
something.
Is Woody Allen still alive?
He's not in New York, isn't he? Isn't he in trouble? Wasn't he?
He was always a big Knicks fan though. Is he still alive?
I know, but wasn't he in trouble for some stuff? Like
He was
normally
at some. Well, his wife was like.
15
I think she was on the. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. She was on the borderline of adulthood. How about that?
borderline.
Anyway,
And
that's
he's
just.
so anyway, so yeah,
I'm
so the
just
Knicks,
I'm
the
just
Knicks.
dating myself in terms of the Knicks
Well, you're just dating
celebrity
yourself in
row.
terms of any pop culture reference. Let's be
Absolutely
honest. But
understood. Understood.
that. Listen, it's par for the course. We're episode 1,100 ish into the pod. Nothing's gonna change you, buddy. Let's be honest.
Hasn't gotten any my recent pop culture knowledge hasn't gotten any better,
There was
unfortunately.
there was a slight uptick in 2020 when you were at home all the time, and maybe
It's
I
true.
felt like you had a little bit more pop culture in you. But now we're back to being the real one. Now the question will be: will we get to November, like October, November, and you're looking for things to do, and while you're enjoying your retirement, are we going to have an uptick in the pop culture? We'll track it. We'll have to have our listeners be the judge of that. And
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
we'll
I
think
don't know. I'm picking up on pop culture probably isn't my number one retirement goal, but whatever. It may pick up. Who knows?
you could
We'll have
watch
to
a
see.
lot. Listen, you could catch up on a lot of movies you missed.
I could.
When you're,
I could watch movies for probably the next 365 days straight during my waking hours and probably still not run out of movies.
you could watch the
So,
Netflix catalog and you'll be like on it. All right. Anyways, so back to the Knicks Pacers. The bottom line was this: the Knicks were not gonna hang with the Pacers again. Um, it was a drubbing, right? Game 6, it was a drubbing, right?
yes.
It was disaster. It was like wasn't even a game. Like I think at halftime I was like, all right, well, this is over. Um, and it's kind of how we figured it was going to go. Congrats to the Knicks for winning Game 5 and not just going out like, or yeah, just not losing, straight up losing that game. Um,
With the
you know,
Cavs? Is that what you're trying to say?
yeah, not like listen, yeah, didn't go out as like they say, didn't go out like a wet fart, right? Like they actually competed and worked hard and played hard, and did their thing. And the bottom line is this, okay? This is Tibbs. It seemed like all the national pundits and the listening back to I was behind on the Simmons pod and I listened to it. I listened to it this morning because I just didn't. I was behind on podcasts and stuff, and I listened to it this morning, and he seemed pretty convinced that Tibbs was going to get fired, and I was like, I just don't understand it. Like, I mean, maybe I guess I know he has a coaching style, but then like stuff started coming out today, and then all of a sudden, I know you sent me the tweet from Shams. I had already seen it, but by the time I had seen it, I assumed you had already seen it, so I didn't even bother sending it to you since you're off school and I'm still at school. So Tibbs getting fired. Apparently, the report was that they talked to the top players on the team about how they felt. And I've seen a lot of people tweeting this is the second time Karl Anthony Towns has gotten Tibbs fired. So anyway, I once again, I don't know, who's going to be the coach of the New York Knicks. I don't know if did you listen to this new Simmons pod that came out today?
I did not listen to the one today yet.
So he talks for like 20 minutes before he gets Pablo Torre on to talk about the Belichick stuff. But he talked about how he has a feeling it's going to be Johnny Bryant, which I know Johnny Bryant was named as a finalist for the Suns job along with the other. So both, which is hilarious, that both the finalists for the Suns jobs were Cavs assistants this year. Okay, which is even more hilarious when you remember that Matt Ishbia is the owner of the Suns and Dan Gilbert is the owner of the Cavs, and they hate each other with the burning passion. Okay, so there's lots of little things there, but Simmons seemed to hint that he thinks that Johnny Bryant's going to get the job. Now, I have not seen anyone else reporting it, but Simmons is pretty plugged in. I think he's pretty plugged in. So maybe Johnny Bryant's going to go there, and I know there had been previous connections with Johnny Bryant with the Knicks at one point. So that's a possibility for sure, right? Johnny Bryant worked with Brunson, right? Is that accurate? At one point,
so yes, I believe
so. So Bryant going there would be good, and for the kids, for like the synergy. I don't necessarily know that would be good for the Cavs, but I also don't know that. I think they're pretty much running Atkinson's philosophies, and I think I'm not as concerned about us losing an assistant coach, and maybe I'll, we have all offseason to talk about Cavs and what they need to do to change things and ridiculous trade proposals for Cooper Flag. What the heck is ESPN doing? Get out of here with that. They're not. Cooper Flag is not getting traded to the Cavs. You saw that trade, right? Come on, yeah, that's crazy. Come on, man. What is ESPN's just aggregating, trying to get people to talk. And anyways, I don't know who's going to end up in New York, but we'll have to see. Obviously, I'm going to guess it's someone that's not going to play their guys 46 minutes a game, and have a backup plan have a bench situation sorted out. And then on the other side of the coin, Indiana.
Can we stay with New York for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I want to ask you two questions related to the Knicks.
All right.
So let me ask the semi.
I've been answering a lot of questions. I've been asking a lot of research education questions lately, Mike. So if you ask me a question, I start spouting educational reform and conceptual understanding stuff. Make sure you get me on track.
Just translate them to basketball. Just do some synonyms and put them in there, and you'll be able to figure it out. Okay, so here's my first semi-serious question. When you mentioned that, you mentioned that the top players on the Knicks were asked for their input on the new coach or the firing of Thibodeau. Would you go to Karl Anthony Towns with any question more serious than what would I name my pet dog? I wouldn't ask
that's a serious question.
I wouldn't ask the guy's opinion on anything. Look,
the first guy you go to is Jalen Brunson, right?
Right.
Or is it Rick Brunson?
But, yeah, maybe it's both. Maybe it's a partnership. They're both sitting in the room when James Dolan talks.
Jalen Brunson's his own agent, right? Is he the one that's his own agent?
Well, all those guys are with CAA, right? Because of the Leon Rose connection. So I don't know if Brunson is a CAA client or not. I would guess he probably is, but I don't know that for a fact. Anyway, first of all, I would not take Karl Anthony Towns' opinion in any way, shape, or form seriously. Obviously, Brunson probably is a different story. If you're Brunson, obviously the goal is to win. From a selfish standpoint, I'm not sure that Brunson could have any real complaints about the way that Tibbs ran their team, right? Because basically it was put the ball in Brunson's hands and let him create and do things. So I just wouldn't go to Karl Anthony Towns. And I know I've been saying it's just the very first moment that this trade occurred that Knicks fans would come to regret having Karl Anthony Towns. And I don't know that they necessarily would regret it. I don't know that Julius Randle had two really good playoff series and then was not very good against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But both of those guys are flawed players, and basically what you had was a swap of two flawed players that I would say both of them probably performed better than most
That would be
people,
it's
I think, would
basically
have guessed.
like I look at it as in a classroom sense, Mike. Here we go. You have one child that misbehaves and another child who misbehaves, and you swap classrooms. It's not
Right.
going to change. It's not going to change the behavior, right? It's not going to change it, regardless.
Or it might work a little bit. It might work for a little while, but
It might have a
eventually
honeymoon period. A honeymoon period,
Correct.
where,
Right.
and then
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, for sure. You're eventually going to regress to the norm.
See, I'm going to try to incorporate education in as much as I can, because then I could take snippets of the podcast and like use it in my education research, Mike. Or does that sound?
I like it.
Okay,
that
sorry.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like you got that going, man. We're gonna be hearing a lot of jargon over the next couple months. So
years. Anyways,
this semi serious question that I just asked you about going to Karl-Anthony Towns to get his opinion leads me into my second question, which is
less serious.
When you look at this, no, this one is more serious.
Oh.
When you look at the Knicks season as a whole, right? I believe they were 0-10 against Boston.
0-12.
Oklahoma City.
0-12.
Against Oklahoma City, Boston, and the Cavs. They couldn't be 0-12.
No, it was Oklahoma City, Boston,
and the Cavs.
The Cavs, and there was one other team they kept incorporating in that.
Okay, well, I thought they were 0-10 against the three teams. Anyway, whatever. My point being is that during the regular season, the Knicks had a decent record, probably finished about where most people thought they would finish in the regular season. And then going into the playoffs, I'm pretty sure you could count on less than one hand the number of people that thought that the New York Knicks would advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Nobody thought they were beating Boston.
Yeah, well, listen, nobody thought they were beating Boston. No one thought Indiana was beating the Cavs, right?
Right. So my question is, did the New York Knicks, in your mind, underachieve this season with what they accomplished going 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals? Now, the caveat is they weren't facing the Cavs, who won 64 games. They weren't facing, and they were able to beat the Celtics. But the reality is, if you go back to the beginning of the playoffs or you go back to the beginning of the season, if you'd have said to a Knicks fan or just an NBA person in general, hey, the Knicks are going to make it to game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals, I think going into the season, most people would have told you that was either a very, very good season for the Knicks, that was on the sort of the
I
top
100%,
end
I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. If you would have told the Knicks fan they were going to make it to the Eastern Conference semis, or even like game 7 of the Eastern Conference semis, I think they would have been ecstatic. If you would have told them they would have just get to the Eastern Conference Finals, they could have been swept in the Eastern Conference Finals. If you would have told them on October 20th, before the season started, or October 17th, whatever date it was, they would have been ecstatic, Mike.
Right.
100%.
So that goes to why, if Tibbs was the leader in getting them to that position where they overachieved relative to what people thought, then how does Tibbs become the fall guy? I mean, I have some thoughts, and I'm sure you have some thoughts too. But when you look at it from the outside and you look at it objectively and you say, even going into the season, before regular season game 1, if you told anyone, hey, the Knicks are going to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and they're going to lose in 6 games, I think most people would say that was going to be a pretty successful outcome for this team. Things must have gone pretty well with bringing in Karl-Anthony Towns for Julius Randle. You go to the start of the playoffs and you say, hey, the Knicks are going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and they're going to lose in 6 games. Based on the bracket, people have told you that is an unbelievable season, right? That they knocked off the defending champion Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference semis to even get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, again, before the playoffs started, most people were anticipating that the number 1 seed 64-win Cavs were going to be waiting for them in the Eastern Conference Finals. So all this is kind of looked at through the lens of
they're looking through the same lens as the Cavs, Mike. In my opinion, they're looking through the same lens as the Cavs, because when the Cavs got the number 1 seed, no one thought we were going to, we thought we were on the collision course with Boston. Okay.
Sure.
And we lost to Indiana. So yeah. And I saw someone tweet. So you're telling me that Tibbs got fired for taking his team to the 6th game of an Eastern Conference Finals and losing, but the Cavs lost in the second round again, and you're willing to stand pat and not make a change. And I don't need us to sit here and litigate whether the Cavs need to make a change and what they should do and what they can do and what they will do. But I thought that was a very good analogy. Like, you're sitting here saying, oh yeah, we got to fire this guy who just, by the way, the Knicks have continually improved every year, right? Tibbs has taken over essentially, like in the grand scheme of how far they've gotten in the postseason.
For sure.
Playoff
Absolutely.
performance. And,
for sure.
And ultimately, Mike, what does we measure anything? And we don't, the regular season 64 win Cavs, in 5 years, no one's going to remember that team because they didn't do anything in the playoffs. Okay.
Correct.
Let's be honest. We measure everything by playoff performance. Okay. Listen, Big Shot Bob in the regular season, he wasn't that great, but how many game winners in the postseason does he have? And how many key moves did he, how many important integral roles did he play in the playoffs, right? He played, like, I have so many memories of Robert Horry etched in my brain, hitting ridiculous shots for teams, the Lakers and the Spurs, like that. He doesn't, all his regular season stuff, that doesn't matter. And, and the opposite end of the spectrum, you think back to Karl Malone. He had all those great stats, and then in the playoffs, completely craps the bed in the, 97 finals, and missing those free throws, and then Jordan hits the three, or hits the game winner. Like we look at the playoff. Everything is measured by playoff performance, and this Knicks team had a mediocre regular season. They were the number 3 seed, mediocre. Okay,
about where people thought they would be.
About where they thought they were going to be. There wasn't, and then they got to the Eastern Conference Finals and they dragged it to 6 games. And once again, it was Indiana, and now Indiana's in the finals. And that's the opponent notwithstanding, it doesn't matter. They still got to the Eastern Conference Finals in Game 6 after, having issues. I just don't understand, and maybe I'll be wrong, and maybe next year they'll get further. But if they don't make any moves, and that was the other thing that Simmons talked about is, do you make this move knowing that you're going to have a big move in the offseason, and you're going to know that Kevin Durant or Giannis Antetokounmpo or X is not going to want to play for Thibodeau? That was the kind of where he thought the reasoning behind the trade the Knicks have to have some kind of plan in place to make a big change, because he didn't feel, and I kind of tend to agree with him, was I just don't see why you would not give him one more year, because he's continually, the playoff and performance has improved. And that's once again where you're measured. The regular season is the regular.
Right. What are the arguments, though? What are the arguments against Tibbs? The arguments against Tibbs are he plays his guys too many minutes. Is that completely the fault of the coach, or is that partly the fault of the general manager building the roster? So, in other words, is Precious Achiuwa a guy who could play 18 to 20 minutes in a playoff game if he had been playing 18 to 20 minutes all during the season? Is DeLon Wright somebody that could play those minutes?
Mike, it goes back to the Cavs again. I keep dragging the Cavs. It's the Dean Wade situation, right? Like, is Precious Achiuwa and Dean Wade, like, I'm not saying they're the same player, but like, you're relying on, they're not going to tip the scale one way or another.
Conversely, you look at Indiana's depth and how well their depth has played at times. Again, not every game. People are making it out like Indiana's depth, like Benedict Mathurin has come through every game, and he's had some big games.
He had 2 great games in this series.
Correct. But he also had games where the first 2
games
in the series, he basically didn't play. He is a clown. He's a complete clown.
We haven't used that phrase in a while. There are clowns everywhere.
We have not. There are clowns everywhere. So so one of the criticisms of Tibbs is it the fault of the roster building, or is it a fault of the roster is there if you developed it more and gave guys more of an opportunity? The answer probably lies somewhere in the
In the
middle.
middle. Yeah.
If you want to change that, then certainly it doesn't seem like over the course of Tibbs' coaching career, he's not looking to play 9 or 10 guys. He's looking to play his best 5, 6, 7 guys, and that's it. And most coaches end up getting to that in the playoffs. Tibbs ends up getting to that very early in the regular season. So that's number one. And I think the second thing that you hear in terms of criticism of Tibbs is what are they doing on offense, right? Their offense basically in the playoffs, especially, and it's kind of been this way the whole season, is it devolves into just give Jalen
Dribble, dribble, dribble.
Let him dribble around. Eventually we set a ball screen, but everything kind of comes off of what Jalen Brunson does with the ball. And is there a more creative way to get Mikal Bridges involved in more things where he has the ball in his hands some? Could you put Cat in better positions to take advantage of the things that he does well? Is there a way to involve Anunoby more in the offense? Can you get more movement? Can you get more off-ball stuff? And look, you think about the Cavs this season, right? And sort of the way that they transformed the way that they played offensively. They were much more dynamic, much more passing, much more ball movement. And yet, when push came to shove, really the only way they could score was Donovan Mitchell just kind of going one-on-one. And so there's this balance between you want to have the ball in your best player's hands, making decisions and doing things, but yet you also have to have the capability of being able to utilize ball movement, being able to trust the guys who are going to end up with wide open shots. And that's part of what, when we get to OKC, right, is that their secondary guys, Jalen Williams was a little bit shaky at times. So was Chet Holmgren in the Denver series. They were both really, really good against Minnesota. And for the most part, all their secondary players have been able to come up with big enough moments to support what Shea is doing as the center of the offense. So I think those are the two big criticisms of Tibbs is he doesn't use his bench, and offensively maybe they're a little stale, and can they get more creative? And so you can understand, I guess I get that offseason point of, are there guys around the league that want to play with Tibbs that don't want to play for Tibbs? Who knows? I don't know what his reputation is with players in the league. The fact of the matter is that everywhere he's gone, he's improved the team and made them better. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that guys love playing for him. And I know that at least in Minnesota, I guess I haven't heard this as much in New York, but there was a lot of talk of like how long his grueling practices were. He practiced more like a college team, and that NBA's guys kind of bristled against that. So who knows what's going on behind the scenes in terms of that. But what I do know is that nobody can say to me and look me in the eye and tell me, hey, the New York Knicks underachieved this season. That I just don't believe. In fact, I would argue that they probably overachieved. And so, in a lot of ways, it feels like firing Tibbs is slightly unfair because of what he was able to get out of this group. And I'm not sure that somebody else is going to get as much, and certainly not more, out of this group. But if you're setting yourself up to make a move with a coach who maybe is more attractive to players that you might want to trade for, or that potentially you could attract in some other way, then yeah, I guess it makes sense. The reality is that most guys, Tibbs was there 5 seasons. That's much longer than the average tenure of an NBA coach. And so it's not all that surprising that, given the opponent was the Indiana Pacers and not the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that you lost what you felt, certainly going into it, the Knicks felt like it was a winnable series. To lose it, you can understand the point of view of, we're going to give the coach the heave ho, bring in somebody new, and see if we can't do something to change it up with the roster we have. Or who knows, maybe they're going to completely blow up the roster. I have no idea. But anyway, all right, that's probably enough Knicks talk.
Yeah, that's enough Knicks talk. And I mean, I don't know how much we need to talk about the Pacers. We talked about the Pacers a lot in the Cavs. They did a lot of the same things, right? They pressured the ball, bringing up the floor. They made a lot of shots. They had that one game that they did make a lot of shots. You know, you texted me saying regression to the mean. You know, listen, the bottom line is this. Congrats, Indiana Pacers. You made it to the NBA Finals. I think you're about to get smoked.
So here's my thought. Here's my big picture thought, and we can dive into it a little bit more. But I'm looking at the Indiana Pacers right now as the mid-major school in the NCAA tournament that
Cinderella story game,
won their second round game. Maybe they won their Sweet 16 game because in the course of a time there, they beat a powerhouse team who maybe wasn't as good as everybody thought they were. Then they met up with another team that was kind of on their level that they were able to beat. And now all of a sudden they're running into one of the number one seeds. And I watched them play against the Cavs, who were quite honestly a shell of what we hoped they would be. And then I watched them play against the Knicks, and I never came away from any of those games between the Knicks and Pacers and looked at it and thought, and how do people play with the Pacers? How can teams not be able to do what needs to be done in order to guard them? I looked at them and I'm like, man, there's got to be. It's still. I have a hard time wrapping my head around what the Cavs team we saw in the regular season and the Cavs team that showed up to play against the Indiana Pacers. And I just look at this matchup with Oklahoma City, and I just don't see anything. When I look at the last two opponents that Oklahoma City's played with Denver and Minnesota, and I look at just the different problems that those teams can present in terms of specific matchups, in terms of thighs, in terms of skill level at different spots, in terms of just the style of play. I don't see how Indiana competes in this series. I honestly I don't see how they win a game. I'm going to be completely honest. I'll be very surprised if this
Yeah,
series even gets to 5 games.
the only
I think
way
it's a 4-0 sweep.
I think there's I think it's a 4-0 sweep or a 4-1, and the only game possibly is that they had that letdown game against Minnesota where Minnesota shot the ball well. They played terrible. It was an away game. That's the situation that I see them winning a game. I do not see them grinding out a victory. I don't see them falling behind 20 and coming back like they did against the Cavs or the Knicks. I don't see any of that happening. This is called this is going to be the Thunder beatdown. The Thunder beatdown, and I don't really know what more to say other than I just don't think this is close. I just don't. And it's kind of I want it to be close because I want it to be interesting, but I just don't see it. I just look at all the matchup problems and everything. I just don't see how they're gonna be able to hang with them. And this is going to probably go down as one of the historically greatest seasons if Oklahoma City gets like the job done. Like to go, I think the numbers would be 84 and
18.
Like 18 if they were to go undefeated, or 84 and 19. Like when you look at the teams that have done that, there's not many, Mike.
No, there's not.
So it's going to go down as this. And by the way, that historically great season is going to go. I mean, and that's going to be done in a Western Conference that was a brutal gauntlet all season. Like, we basically talked about after number 1, we didn't know who 2 through 11 was going to be because all those teams were, relatively competitive with one another. So, man, I don't know. It's going to, Oklahoma City is assuming they get the job done in 4 or 5 games. It's definitely going to go down there as one of the best seasons. Like, and what'll be funny will be
you've got the MVP too, right? So yeah, that makes it even. And Shea, with the exception of 1 or 2 games during this playoff run,
he's played great.
He's been everything he was during the regular season. You can basically any game you want to put him out there, you're chalking him up for between 30 and 40 points on efficient shooting. And when you have a historically great team that also has an MVP on it, it sort of just adds to the lore of that particular team. So you can go ahead and finish your point, and then I want to just say a couple things about Indiana in terms of what might be able to give them.
I don't really remember what my point was, other than I think it's going to be a beatdown, Mike. So you can share. Okay. You can share what.
All right. Okay. So I think when I look at this series, I see a few things that Indiana has done so far through three rounds of the playoffs that for them to have any chance, these things have to continue. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not any of these things are things that you can chalk up to their opponents or whether these are things that are just built into the DNA of the Pacers. So the first thing is the Pacers have been a very low turnover team, but a team that at the same time is playing at a very fast pace. So you think about the Warriors during their run. They were a team that played at the time at a pretty fast pace, shot a lot of threes. And as a result, they were also a team that kind of was sloppy with the ball. And they frequently would have more turnovers than the other team. And you had to kind of live with that because that's the style of play, right? They're getting up and down, they're throwing the ball all over the place. When you're playing at a fast pace, you tend to turn the ball over more. Well, Indiana is sort of the opposite of that. They have been a very, very low turnover team throughout the regular season and the postseason. And yet they're also a team that plays at a very, very fast speed. I mean, how many times did they score in that Knicks series where the Knicks made a basket and then Pascal Siakam's shooting a layup at the other end before the shot clock even gets to 20? And so in order for Indiana to be able to stay in the series, Halliburton has to continue his ability to have a 9-1, 10-1, 11-2 assist to turnover ratio. He cannot turn the ball over. And he's been able to do that throughout his career. Can the Pacers as a whole sustain what they've been able to do offensively against the Thunder's pressure defense, which has been historically great when you compare it to all the other defenses, both in the regular season and in the postseason? They've turned the ball over, made their opponents turn the ball over at an incredible rate, and then turned those points quickly into scores at the other end. So Indiana's going to have to, I don't want to say win the turnover battle, but they can't get slaughtered in the turnover battle against Oklahoma City. They have to take care of the ball and not let Oklahoma City turn them over and turn that into easy offense. So
Yeah.
that's, I
Yeah.
think,
I mean,
one of the keys.
that's the recipe for success, right? I mean, listen, the Pacers are going to try, and listen, Carlisle's going to have a game plan. Okay, he's going to have a game plan. Is it going to work? Who knows? But listen, the bottom line is this. I just don't think they've got enough. You're going to rely on Nembhard. You're going to rely on Nesmith. You're going to rely on, like, Halliburton can only do.
Let's put it this way. Other than Nesmith's game one, 6 threes in the last 3 minutes of the game, he was far more pedestrian offensively in the Knicks series than he was against the Cavs. Nembhard, other than game 6, was kind of a shell of himself, especially offensively, compared to what he was in the Cavs series. Both of those guys played way better against the Cavs than they played against the Knicks. Miles Turner was way better against the Cavs than he was against the Knicks. To me, I think Miles Turner is going to be – he was actually my second key for Indiana because I think what Oklahoma City is going to try to do, obviously, with Halliburton being Indiana's best player and the driver of what they do, Oklahoma City is going to do everything they can to try to choke Halliburton out as much as possible, which may mean that at times they're going to leave Miles Turner open on the screen roll where maybe they have to double Halliburton or maybe they're going to switch it or whatever it is, whatever they decide to do with that. There's going to be times where Miles Turner either is going to get a small guy on him, which he did against the Cavs, and he punished the Cavs when the Cavs switched the small guy into him, whether it was Strus or Garland. He immediately went to the post, caught the ball, and was scoring over top of those guys. You didn't see that as much in the Knicks series. And then if he can pick and pop and get threes, it just puts more pressure on Oklahoma City's defense. I think Miles Turner is going to have a good series in order for Indiana to be able to stay in it. The role players, I think, is 3. We already talked about that. Nesmith and Nembhard have to be able to hit shots. Those guys are going to have to shoot high 30s, low 40s from 3 in order to give Indiana a chance in any of these games. And then on the other end of it, I don't know Shea, it sounds even stupid to even say, well, they don't have anybody who can guard Shea. The reality is Shea's going to put up between 30 and 40 probably every game in this series, regardless of who's guarding him, regardless of how they try to guard him, whatever. So then the question becomes, can you somehow impact Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren as Indiana? Can you make them play below their capabilities, below what they played in terms of their level against Minnesota, where they were both very, very good? Can Indiana slow those two guys down enough to give themselves a chance? I just think that Indiana's been built around offense and Oklahoma City's been built around defense. And I just feel like Oklahoma City's defense is better than Indiana's offense. Here's a question that was kind of percolating in my head, especially when Pascal Siakam won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, which I know he had 3 30-point games, but I don't understand how you could watch that series and not believe that the most valuable player for the Indiana Pacers was Tyrese Halliburton.
I was having flashback to 2015, Mike.
Yeah, it doesn't make. I mean that
when
vote,
LeBron deserved the MVP when he didn't win.
Yeah, like quite honestly, it was like I was stunned beyond belief that Siakam.
So was Halliburton apparently.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I just don't. I don't know. Like I said, Siakam had some good games and played well, and certainly was an important part of what Indiana did. But you can't watch those games and not think that Halliburton was the best player. And so the question that I have is, I've never been a huge Pascal Siakam, I don't want to say fan, because it's not like I dislike the guy. I just don't know.
He's not what you would classify as a foundational piece on a championship. Like, you're not going to build a team around him. All right.
He's Indiana's second best player. So if you want to just look at it this way, and Siakam's been very good. He's done things in the series against the Cavs and in the series against the Knicks that, to be quite honest, I'm not sure I thought that he had in him. I thought he shot the three much better than he has at any point in his career, especially in terms of big moments. It felt like every time they needed a big three and he was the guy taking it, it felt like he was the anti-Dean Wade. It felt like it almost always went in. And then he also was able to take smaller guys into the post and score over them. And of course, we already talked about the runouts off of made baskets where he's just sprinting out and Halliburton's passing ahead to him. But if you look at the Pacers and you look at the most common way that NBA championship teams are built, right? You have a player who is a top 5, maybe if you want to stretch it, top 10 player in the league. And then oftentimes the second best player is right there, probably in the top, if not the top 10, certainly in the top 20. And I don't think I would put Pascal Siakam in as one of the 20 best players in the league. Now he's made a couple all NBA teams, so that puts him in those given seasons in the top 15. So maybe I'm underrating him, but to me, the Halliburton Siakam top 2 combo doesn't hold water when it comes to NBA history. And you're asking a team that has that combination to beat a team that, as you already detailed, has a possibility of going down with combining their regular season and playoff records as one of the best historical teams in the history of the league. And that's statistically, you look at their point differential, you look at what they've done defensively in terms of their points per 100 possession compared to everybody else in the league. I know at one point during the regular season, towards the end, they were 10 points better per 100 possessions than the second best defense in the league. And so to me, you put together Oklahoma City has the reigning MVP. They have a historically great record. They have a historically great point differential. They have 2 guys who are still young as their second and third banana, but 2 guys that have proven themselves over the course of this playoff run to maybe not come through every time, but certainly there's been enough big spots. And I feel like they've gotten better as they've gotten more reps. They were certainly, both of those guys were better against Minnesota than they were against Denver in terms of their consistency. And Oklahoma City's deep. They're mean. They're physical. They are not going to get worn out by the Pacers' speed and getting up and down the floor. Oklahoma City wants to play the same way in terms of the frenetic pace that they want to play. It's just that Oklahoma City wants to play that frenetic pace on defense. Indiana wants to play it on offense. I just think Oklahoma City's defense is better than what Indiana's offense is going to be able to bring to the table. When that's the side of the ball, we're talking Pacers offense, Oklahoma City's defense. I just think Oklahoma City's defense is going to trump Indiana's offense.
Okay, so Mike, you're saying it's going to be a sweep. So what's the closest game going to be? What's the point total? What's the closest margin of victory?
I honestly think that the first two games are just destructions. I don't know if I could see one of those games being a 35 or 40 point destruction, game 1 or 2. Other game, I think they win by double figures. Game 3 is the game that has a chance to be close. But I could see almost to the point where 2 home games. I think you sent me the tweet, right, of when Simmons tweeted out just the point differential, the margin of victory in all their home games, except for the one that they lost to Denver with the fouling up 3 and trying to prevent Denver from getting off a 3. If you eliminate that game, they basically won every game by double figures and well beyond that. And so my question is, will Oklahoma City break Indiana in the first 2 games to the point where maybe even game 3 doesn't matter? I kind of expect it to go somewhat in that direction, but I think Indiana, based on what we've seen in this playoffs, clearly they're a team that doesn't quit and give up too easily with the way that they've been able to come back in various games throughout the first 3 series. So it's probably presumptuous to say that they're going to quit, but I just think Oklahoma City, I think they're going to overwhelm them. Like I said, I think this is a Cinderella story that is the clock's about to strike 12 on Indiana's ability to do anything with Oklahoma City. I don't see how they attack Oklahoma City's defense and offensively for Oklahoma City. I think they have a lot of directions that they can go, and you're already penciling in Shea for 35 a night. And like I said, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren have both gotten better over the course of this playoff run. I don't really like the matchups for Indiana. There's really nowhere when you look at Oklahoma City and you think about Indiana's offense, most teams have a weak link, right? There's something that you can sort of pick on. But you look at Oklahoma City's lineup of the guys that they play, and they don't play anybody who's a bad defender. There's nobody on the floor ever for them. And even as deep as they go, you're bringing off the bench Cason Wallace, good defender. Alex Caruso, good defender. It's just you just keep the guys they just keep coming. There's no weak links. And because of that, when you're a team that is stuck in half court offense and there's nowhere really for you to just pick on things, then you have to rely on, hey, can I beat my guy one-on-one? Can I create things with the flow of the offense? And I just don't think Oklahoma City can do that. And conversely, when Oklahoma City has the ball, I just think Shea, as much as we want to say, as good as Donovan Mitchell was, as good as Jalen Brunson is, Shea obviously is another level beyond those guys. And nobody's been able to stop him from getting to his spots and getting his mid-range jumper or getting all the way to the rim or getting fouled, and whether you want to call him a foul baiter or not. The fact is nobody's been able to stop him. I don't think Indiana is going to be able to stop him. And you put all that together, and I just don't see how Indiana competes. I just don't.
I agree. I think the closest game is like 18 points if they get swept. And like I said, game 3, if the letdown happens for Oklahoma City and Indiana uses the crowd and Caitlin Clark's doing little dances or stuff and she's in the crowd, then maybe Indiana steals game 3. But I think that's the only game that they have any chance of winning. And we've eaten lots of crow on this podcast before, so we could be wrong, but I just don't see it happening.
I don't see it either. I can't see the path. To me, there's nothing that I look at and say I don't.
Listen, we've been wrong
I just
before,
don't
though,
see-
Mike. We have been
We
wrong
have.
before. You
We
know,
definitely have.
when we have Head Start basketball camps, which are starting soon, and we see the teams and how they lay out, I often have a paper champion. And sometimes the paper champion doesn't pull out the victory, Mike. Now, once again, those are kids that are not nearly the level of basketball, not even close. They sometimes think they're.
They do. Lots of people have been wrong in this postseason, right? You go back to the Lakers Timberwolves series, and I think the ESPN whatever poll of the NBA experts at ESPN, I think every single person picked the Lakers. Maybe there was one person who picked Minnesota. I think Indiana and Cleveland, every single person picked the Cavs to beat Indiana. There was nobody saying, I think Indiana's better than Cleveland. They had the same consensus, the same thought that we did, that the two teams were pretty similar and the Cavs just had more talent. And sometimes more talent, at least in that case, didn't translate. But I think in this case, I don't see what the Pacers have that will allow them to attack Oklahoma City. When you looked at even Denver and you looked at Minnesota, there were at least things that you could say that if they did this, I could see it happening. Like with Denver, right? It was how are they going to guard Jokic? Who's going to guard him? Hartenstein or Holmgren? You're not going to slow down Nikola Jokic completely. He's going to be able to do things. You're going to have to double him. You're going to have to make him pass the ball. And if other guys shoot the ball well, you can see how Denver's going to be able to score. Minnesota, we said they got to pound the offensive boards. They can't turn the ball over. Ant's got to have a big series. If they do all those things, there was a lot of ifs, but if those things went right, you could see where they could be competitive and they could win. And we saw that with Minnesota, right? In the game 3, what it was game 4, where game 3, I guess, where they beat, where they were able to beat Oklahoma City. Things went well. They shot the ball extremely well, and they were able to win a game. I don't see, for the life of me, I can't see what those things are for Indiana. Even if they don't turn the ball over, I just don't see how they generate easy baskets against Oklahoma City's defense. And I just think Oklahoma City's offense is good enough that they're going to score plenty to be able to take these games in a pretty easy fashion.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. Anything else?
No, I mean, again, when you're talking about what we both think is going to be a fairly easy series for Oklahoma City, I don't think there's a ton of other things we can look at. To me, it still comes down to Halliburton and the Pacers can't turn the ball over. Miles Turner has to have a really good series. Indiana's role players have to shoot the ball really well, and you have to get the very best apex version of Pascal Siakam. That's a lot of ifs. And even I think if you do all those, I still think that only gets you to maybe we have a chance to win a game, even if all those things happen. And that's not a good place to be if you're Indiana. But kudos to the Pacers for getting to where they are. I think Rick Carlisle has proven himself to be one of the best NBA coaches of his era after winning a championship in Dallas and then orchestrating this team, which plays a totally different style than that Dallas team. Speaks to the ability of a good coach, right, to be adaptable. It's one of the things we talk about in our interviews with coaches here on the pod is you can't just be wedded to your system if you don't have personnel that fit what you're trying to do. And so you have to be able to adapt and adjust. And I think Carlisle has proven himself to be one of those guys that can do that. And certainly he's done it in a variety of places within the league. And I don't think he's going to get his second championship, but he's done a really good job with Indiana. Nobody's going to say Indiana underachieved what people thought going into this season, or certainly going into this postseason.
For sure. I agree 100%. I would really like to be in their shoes right now. Even if they do get swept, I would have liked the Cavs to be in their shoes. Let's be honest. So,
True. And we'll have plenty of time to dissect what the Cavs may or may not do with Cooper Flag once we are able to consummate that trade and bring him in. We'll see that it's going to be really
Hey,
exciting to
oh
have
wait, real one quick.
the
Did
number
you
one
see?
pick.
Did you see what the supposed alternates are going to be next year
The alternate uniforms.
for the Cavs?
No, I only saw the Magic bringing back the pinstripes. I saw
We're
that,
bringing
but I
back
did
the
not see
blue,
anything
baby.
on the Cavs.
We're bringing back the blue from 2009, 2010 season. I
So
love the
that's
blue,
the blue with.
the red and gold trim. I love
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I love that blue.
That
I
wasn't
got
bad. Yeah, it's a good blue.
that's my LeBron jersey. I'll be able to bust it out, baby. That's what I want to
There
see.
you go.
Maybe
All right,
is
well,
that
there you go.
wait, is that a tea leaves? Is that them saying he's coming back, Mike?
You think so? What are the odds? Give me the
Okay.
odds. What are the odds that you think?
2%.
What are the odds?
2%.
What's that? What?
2%. 2%. Here's a question. If they could get him for the veteran minimum, or like Jared Allen or whatever, however they could work it, and the only asset that we give up is Jared Allen, you take it, right?
Yes. Here's why.
Wait a second. This is a change.
Here's why. It's a complete. This is a complete change. It's a complete change. Here's why. Because this team, to me, has proven two things.
I'm
One,
floored, Mike. I did not expect this response to you.
So
Good.
two things. Here's my two things. Here's my two things that I now believe about the Cleveland Cavaliers. This particular version of the Cleveland Cavaliers, whether it's just the four main guys or you want to throw in the next five guys, this version of the Cleveland Cavaliers is not tough enough, doesn't have enough grit to be able to win in the playoffs. They just don't. I will forever go to my grave believing that those guys should have played in game two. I still go back to the Knicks series, which is now 3 years ago. I go back to Jared Allen's injury, and I know that it came out. He was in tremendous pain and whatever, but it's the playoffs. You figure out a way to play. We see guys all the time that go down with ankles that look like they almost snapped in two, and guys are back on the floor. I just don't know that the toughness of this team, the way it's constituted, is going to be enough. We have 3 years now of evidence that this team is not tough enough. And look, they've been young. You could say they're trying to build continuity. That's number one. I just don't think they're tough enough. Second thing is, and we said it 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I don't remember when we first started saying it, but if Donovan Mitchell is your best player, you're not winning an NBA championship. And Donovan Mitchell was awesome. I love the guy. I think he gave his heart and soul to this season. I think he cares about Cleveland. I'm 100% in favor of Donovan Mitchell. I think back to my initial reaction to the trade, right? And I was like, I'm not really sure. If I could go back and replay my reaction to that, fantastic trade. Donovan Mitchell's been everything that the Cavs could have ever hoped for in terms of a guy. However, the Cavs are not winning an NBA title until Evan Mobley is the best player on this team. Now, is Evan Mobley ever going to be the best player on this team? We have vacillated on that almost as much as we vacillated on the Darius Garland, Tyrese Halliburton, who's better debate. Yeah. But I have more faith now that he could maybe be the best player. I have some questions with him sitting out game two with his ankle that are a little bit concerning to me. But a year ago at this time, well, I guess maybe before his playoff series without Jared Allen against the Celtics, I wasn't nearly as convinced as that was even possible. Now I feel like that's possible. And so for those reasons, I am not as leery of bringing LeBron in and screwing up what I think is a championship formula. I don't think this is a championship formula, what we have right now. I don't think the little backcourt can win a championship.
So here's a question for you, Mike. Does LeBron look at the landscape of the West and look at the landscape of the East and say, well, crap, Tatum's out for the year. Boston Celtics are basically sunk. Milwaukee Bucks are probably trading Giannis. If I'm on the Cavs, we do not lose to Indiana, and we beat the Knicks. If I'm on the Cavs, like who's my biggest threat? Joel Embiid, who can't play 25 games. I mean, this is where the rubber meets the road with. Does LeBron care about winning again or not? Because if he doesn't care about winning, then he's going to stay in LA because they're not winning. Like, I know Luka's on some diet and weightlifting nonsense. Give me a break. That'll last 2 months. And then could be smoking his cigarettes, drinking his beer, and then it be so. If LeBron cares about,
you've soured on Luka, man.
No, I'm just listen.
Now,
I love
now
Luka as a player.
Now you got him drinking beer and smoking hookah.
Hey, listen, we're not talking about your guy. Oh boy, your guy, Mr. Williamson. He's in a little bit of trouble right now. I don't know if you've seen the stuff, but we're gonna leave it at that. Anyways, if this is where the road meets the road with LeBron. You are 40, right? He's 40 now, right? He's 40 now, right? Going on 41 in December. If you care about winning, get your ass back to Cleveland because you got a chance to make the finals in Cleveland without even probably breaking a sweat next season. Honestly, if he's on this team and you can finagle it so you're not giving up any of the what I would classify the big three. I mean, you put a starting lineup of Mobley, Garland, Mitchell, LeBron, and then hell, Dean Wade. I don't care. Put someone Max Strus and having LeBron playing the 4. You basically put Mobley at the 5, right? You put Mobley at the 5. You have LeBron at the 4. You got Strus, Garland. I mean, that team's not. There's no one in the East next year touching them. Detroit? Am I afraid of Detroit? No. I'm not afraid of Detroit. Come on now. So, come on, LeBron. I'm starting my plea now, my 2% plea. Come back next time we podcast, which I don't know when that's going to be because I'm going to be out of town next week, Mike. But next time we podcast about the NBA, I'm going to bust out my LeBron jersey. I'm going to wear it for you. My blue LeBron jersey. The tea leaves. We're going back blue. Bring back LeBron. Let's go.
Make it happen. Like I said, I no longer am of the belief that we are building a championship core with the group that we have. I think this core could very easily win 60 games again next year, but I would not feel very confident going into the playoffs that they would be able to get to where we want them to go unless Evan Mobley takes a huge, giant leap and becomes a Giannis light type of player, which that's still a little bit of a ways away. It still kind of blows my mind that he was second team All NBA, and I know he was great, and I love Mobley. He's probably my favorite player on the team, but thinking that he's one of the 10 best players in the league.
Well, he met the game requirement.
Yeah, look, I get it.
And he won the Defensive Player of the Year because of Wembanyama's injury.
Right. And look, Mobley's great, but when I think of a top 10 player, I still think of a guy that I can just give him the ball and he's going to go get me some buckets. And Evan Mobley is not that at this point in his career. He's shown a little bit more of that. He's shown flashes of it, but he's got a long way to go to get to that level of status within this team and within the league. But I would be okay with LeBron. And if he wants to come back, let's bring him back. Let's see what we can do. And yeah, to your point, in the watered down Eastern Conference, I would expect that team to win 60 games in the regular season and then throw something at the wall and see what sticks in the playoffs. At this point, it's gotten, for me at least, where next year's regular season is going to be pretty irrelevant unless the Cavs make some major changes, because I don't care what their record's going to be, whether they win 50 games or they win 65. My reaction is still going to be shrugging my shoulders and seeing what's going to ultimately happen when they play in the playoffs. You talk about the rubber meets the road. The rubber's not going to meet the road for this Cavs team until next April when the playoffs start. The regular season is going to be pretty much irrelevant. So,
all right, we're ready. I think we went on a 9-minute tangent about LeBron. I love it. I love it.
All right. Well, bring LeBron home. Jason predicted it way back when he first returned back to Cleveland. So he's put it at the chances at 2%. To me, that means it's 99.9% certain. LeBron, welcome back to Cleveland. Thanks to everyone for checking out tonight's episode. We will catch you next week, I guess. It'll maybe be me solo. We'll have to find a suitable substitute for Jason. But thanks for checking us out
Yeah,
tonight.
unless we can, unless the other thought I had, Mike, is unless we try to do a Sunday night pod, because I'm not going to be in the parks on Sunday night. So like after the game, if I can, depending on the hotel situation, I may be sharing a pull-out couch with my daughter, which when I would be able to exit the the room in a very fairly sneakily manner and sneak out to the car and do like I would have to like cap it at 30 minutes, but we might be able to do that depending on the thing. So we'll talk it out. Mike and I will try to sort it out.
The inside story. This is like a documentary on the Hoopheads podcast. You get to see behind the scenes of the.
And let's just be honest. We'll talk about it now.
Sometimes.
We talk about it now, and then Sunday night I'll text Mike. Do you want to try to do it? That's what's going to happen, right? That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, there will definitely be the hoops that we sometimes have to jump through to be able to get ourselves available to podcasts. Let's put it that way. So we appreciate you checking us out tonight. We hope that the NBA Finals is more competitive than what we predicted this evening. So thanks for listening tonight, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.